Walmart has been turned into a hunting ground. Here's your look at the new Lennar Toys Predator Collection Hunter Series City Hunter Predator. Predators, the most deadly and elusive hunters in the universe, have now chosen Earth as their otherworldly hunting ground. Special forces, police, and intelligence operatives are now aware of these deadly creatures, have united to track them down. But really, who's tracking whom? Utilizing advanced alien technology, these deceptive extraterrestrials have an array of weapons for any situation or environment. From dense tropical jungles to concrete-laden cities, the unseen predators stalk their prey and will only leave with trophies in hand. Test your mettle and choose your predator. Grab them before they disappear. Let the hunt begin. So it would seem we're continuing the hunt and having a look at more Lanard Predator figures. Pretty happy with the one that we looked at before with the Berserker Predator, and let's hope that trend continues. Before we get a closer look at City Hunter, I'm going to just get him clocked in here to see how tall the figure actually stands. According to the readouts, he stands just a little over 7 inches. 7.3, I suppose, if you want to be exact about it. We can switch that over to centimeters, revealing that City Hunter Predator, I don't know why I had to say it like that, is actually 18.5 or 18.5 centimeters tall. I suppose if you guys want to see some comparisons, the only one I can really compare it next to right now is we'll bring in the Berserker Predator. Now, while I'm looking at the two figures, I can definitely see there's a lot of things that they've changed. Obviously, they're not going to share the exact same armor, as City Hunter and Berserker are very drastically different from one another, but it also seems like they have different bodies too. Maybe what they could have done is actually just retooled one mold to the other and just added the additional sculpting over top of it. But it clearly looks like when you're looking at the two Predators side to side, they're completely different head sculpts and completely different bodies as well. As for the accessories, though, that come included with the City Hunter, he comes with more, well, twice as much accessories as the Berserker Predator came included with. He comes included with a smart disc. That's nice to see. The smart disc, actually, to the credit of Lanard Toys, sits better in the holster than the ones we generally look at from NECA Toys. But you can see it's all basically just silver plastic. It's not really much in the way of additional paints, but I don't really feel like paint necessarily had to come into play. If they just simply use the coloring of the silver plastic, I think that's more than enough to deliver a pretty good looking smart disc. Now, if you are curious, does the smart disc fit into his hand? Well, not quite. You can fit it just almost in there. Like it literally is just sitting at the doorstep, ringing the bell, waiting for somebody to answer the door. It just barely fits in there. Just barely. You can almost even see right there. It's almost like the fingers needed to be just slightly longer in order to actually get a full grip on that. I mean, it can still hold it in his hands. And if you sort of prop it upright, kind of like what I did right there before I just dropped it, but you can actually fit it into his hand, just not as well as I would hope. But what you can do, though, is you can move his arm out of the way, and you'll see that there's a peg located on the side of his leg. Now, with the NECA releases, and I'm only really using the comparison of NECA because we don't really have any other Predator figures to speak of this size. Hyatt Toys produces, of course, 3 3/4 inch scale. But if you compare apples to apples, or in case NECA to Lanard, Lanard's at least clip a little bit better in place. It's not the most realistic, of course. It's got this big noticeable peg sticking out, but at least, to its credit, it holds the smart disc a lot better in its leg. I wish it held it a lot better in its hands, but, you know, of course, choose your battles. At least it does stay on his leg, and it's not going to be going anywhere. The other thing it comes included with is a combi stick. And let me just also tip my virtual hat to Lanard for actually calling this a combi stick, as opposed to just calling it a spear. I mean, it clearly seems they know what they're doing, and they know the names of these accessories to not just package them and call them just a simple spear. The combi stick, as you can see, much like the smart disc, is all done in just a silver plastic. It's a very muted silver plastic, as you can see. It doesn't fold up or anything like that, but it does fit into his hand. It can actually fit well in either one of his hands. You can slide it down this way, or you can also just have him gripping onto it from this side. And he holds it fine on that side, and he also holds it fine on this side as well. Let's just get that into his hand. Just like So I said it didn't actually take too much hassle to get it into his hands. Let's just slide it in this way. There we go. The grip is actually just the right size that when you shake it, it's not going to be going anywhere. Of course, when it comes time to displaying the figure, I'm probably just going to keep the smart disc located on the side of his leg and instead opt to display him, I feel, with the spear in his hand, the combi stick in his hand. So, of course, he comes with those. I'm going to just take this and put it to the side for the time being. Of course, the one other thing that comes included with the City Hunter is a slightly different shaped plasmacaster shoulder-mounted cannon, which I've mentioned in the past, has a very more insectoid look to it. It kind of looks like a little kind of cockroach. Kind of looks like it got scales on the top there. It does have some posability. If you are wondering, does it actually, let me just pop this off, does it support the plasma bazooka that we had a look at before? It does seem like it uses the same ball joint. It's right in there, obviously, and a little harder to see here, but it looks like it's the same size as the plasma bazooka. So crazy. Came included with the Berserker Predator. So I think you could actually fit this on here. It may butt up against the shoulder. I think the idea is that you can swap these back and forth with one another. But I mean, judging by the very little thin strand of plastic that goes from up here to across before it gets that ball joint, I really don't want to start breaking this. I mean, that's the last thing I would want to do. I mean, it does look like it could possibly pop off and possibly swap to this, but I think I'm going to leave it be. Nonetheless, the packaging simply just advertises that all the figures come with accessories, and really not the intended plan is to start mixing and matching these, so maybe for that reason, another reason why I'll probably just leave that alone. So getting a closer look at the City Hunter, one of my least favorite designs of the Predator. I never really liked the look of City Hunter. I always enjoyed Jungle Hunter just a little bit more. I will say, though, again, going back to a point I mentioned with Berserker, pretty good looking figures. They're large, of course, they're 7 inches tall, and they have lots of posability to speak of, which we'll talk more about in a second. This one I feel does suffer a little bit more from the paint not always making all the places. Yes, of course, all the same things and issues I had really with the previous looked at Berserker Predator. Like, for example, well, the holster. We just finished having a look at the holster and putting that smart disc in place. Clearly, the smart disc holder has no paint whatsoever. Could have gone in there and just painted a little bit, even if it was just plastic. Well, I guess they couldn't do that. Then they'd have to paint the entire leg. But at least go in there and paint that with a little bit of silver. Because when you have the smart disc off of it, it just looks like he's actually got a growth on the side of his leg. All the areas like his gauntlets, for example, they have just resorted to using plastic. They didn't paint over top of it. So as a result of it, it does sort of look like we're just using a different plastic for a different part of the figure's body. I mean, even like the joint, the hinges, for example, on the elbows. Everything on this just resonates to me like unfinished plastic. I guess it gets the job done. I suppose it doesn't necessarily need to have a whole lot of additional paint over top of it. But yeah, looking at it, it does look like we're literally using plastic from different figures. I'm not saying that as a complaint. I'm just saying the fact that, you know, obviously it went an easier route of using this as plastic than having to paint the whole thing in gray. But yeah, there are a few little areas that are painted in gray. Like, for example, the side of the plasmacaster is just left there. Just left to the yellow that they're using for the rest of the plastic. Am I a little disappointed about that? Yeah, only because you're going to see it from the side. I mean, it doesn't look so bad this way. And on this side, it looks generally quite finished. But unfortunately here from this side, you can clearly see this part of the plastic hasn't even been painted in. I mean, the sculpting on the torso as well as the rest of the body is really good on this. There are a few areas where you can really clearly see, like they spent more time painting the front than they did to the back. The back really does leave a whole lot of unfinished canvas just sort of left there, just idly by waiting for a little bit of extra paint, but it never sees the paint. It gets a little bit up here, but unfortunately all the nice red kind of pattern work that they added to the figure only gets given to the front and only given to the arms and only given to the legs. And unfortunately, yeah, the whole back side of it is just completely a vacant wasteland. Ouch. I will say, though, the pattern work is really quite good on this. This rusted red does work quite well with the coloring of the yellow plastic that they used. And at least to its credit, at least all the parts that you're going to be seeing from the front of the figure, Could have, yes, afforded a little bit of extra paint. I'm not going to be overlooking that, but at least it does give a good amount of color across the canvas. At least you're getting a lot of stuff going on here to look at. We get a little bit further down on the legs again, it's just all plastic here. I don't know why, for some reason, this one doesn't feel as secure. Like, it feels like it's a little more falling apart. I don't know if that's the case, because, I mean, it does have all the ball joints where it should be. Maybe it's just the way the design of this particular figure, maybe this design of Predator, shows a little bit more cracks in the foundation versus the Berserker Predator, which I guess maybe hid things a little bit better. As for the figure's articulation, though, its head rotates back and forth. It's basically all the same articulation as we looked at with the Berserker Predator. A nice, good, solid ball joint. Allows the head to tilt further down, further up, back and forth, and you can rotate it back and forth this way as well. I didn't really mention it, but it doesn't have, of course, the little ringlets all painted in gold. That seems to probably be a consistent trend, I think, with all of these Predator figures. If I happen to see one that has these painted in, I'll probably be more surprised, because I don't think they're probably going to go in there and start painting that. The plasma caster does also have posability. It moves up, it moves down. You would think that it would shift back and forth. I mean, it looks like it moves just a little bit, but I don't know to the point where I really want to start fighting it, because it seems like if I was to push that forward on that track, guaranteed I would be the type that probably would end up resulting in breaking that, just because it's very thin plastic. So it does seem like it wants to shift, but I'm just going to leave it alone. I'm going to leave it alone. He does have an upper torso ball joint, so you can move that all the way around, up, down, back and forth. He does have a pin joint on both the arms that allow the arms to kind of go out. It's almost at a full 90-degree angle bend. Almost. You can move the arms forward, you can move the arms back. It does have a single bend at the elbow, which you can also rotate the arms. Very loose on these arms. Very loose on these arms. It does also have swivels on the hands, Legs split out. Again, maybe I've just got a bad figure here, but very loose legs, especially moving them forward and back. I mean, not to the point where they rock, but they do feel a little on the loose side. Single hinge on the knees, that's the case on both sides. And then, as we were looking at before, ball joints in the feet. Although the downside, though, is as you are moving the joint, it's great and all that they do have the ball joint in place, but unfortunately, as you move the feet forward and back, you can start seeing a big noticeable gap there. I guess that's somewhat unavoidable. This particular figure is okay. It does have some good coloring. I wish it had a little bit more coloring, but I don't know. Let's just get this guy to stand straight here for a second. We'll bring in the Berserker Predator. Somehow, I almost even feel like Berserker Predator did things a little bit better. The joints were a little bit tighter on the figure, and I didn't find, again, a lot of the flaws, maybe in the constructions of the figure. I didn't find that as much with Berserker, and yet, for some reason, I seem to find more of it here with City Hunter. I'm sure it has nothing to do with the fact I just don't like the design of City Hunter. City Hunter is not one of my favorite designs of Predators, but somehow the figure, even though it has a similar body build as the Berserker, I don't find delivers as good of a job as what we actually had a look at the Berserker Predator earlier. City Hunter is good, but City Hunter isn't Berserker Predator good. And what I mean by that is that when we had a look at that Berserker Predator, I may have shot myself in the foot by looking at that figure first. I went in with such low expectations, nothing really against Lennar toys, but I really wasn't thinking that this was going to be a great line, just a basic Predator line. But I went in with low expectations when we had a look at that Berserker Predator, and walking out, it was higher than what I started off with. So when I went in with the review of the City Hunter that we're having a look at in this review, I sort of went in with those slightly higher expectations. And I feel like walking out, I'm sort of feeling like the figure under-delivered. And I don't think it has anything to do with, I certainly hope it has nothing to do with the fact I just don't like the design of City Hunter. I never did. I don't think it has anything to do with that. I think Berserker Predator, to its credit, hid its flaws better than City Hunter. What I mean by that is Berserker Predator primarily has that green-colored plastic body. It doesn't really need a whole lot of additional paint. That's just the design of that character. Unfortunately, though, City Hunter, I think, shows those flaws a little bit easier. Because it's using plastic parts for both its gauntlets and its arms, and gauntlets in its legs, it's using gray plastic instead of having to paint those in. What that ends up resulting is, when you look at it, it looks like it's almost just using parts from another figure. Yes, they could have gone in there, they could have, yes, it painted those places. And I feel like because of that, the figure almost comes across slightly more unfinished, especially when you see it from the back. There's a lot more paint going on from the front than there is on the back, and especially here when you see it, there's not really much of anything going on the back, short of just its torso piece that's painted in. The rest of the figure is only really relying on the plastic to deliver the same look that it has in the movie. And because of that, I feel like the figure just comes across slightly unfinished. Where the Berserker Predator hid those flaws, City Hunter, I feel, shows those flaws a lot more. It's not to say that I don't like this line. I'm still impressed with what we got from Lanard Toys. Think of it this way, 7-inch tall figures with 25 points of articulation. And at least City Hunter did give more accessories than what we did get with the Berserker Predator. You get a combi stick, and they actually call it a combi stick, which is fantastic. And you also get yourself the Smart Disc. I wish the Smart Disc fit better into his hand, but at least it comes with more than just one accessory. But unfortunately, the figure just feels unfinished. He looks unfinished. I really would think I would want to go in there with a little bit of paint and just add a little extra something, because I feel like it's lacking a little bit. It doesn't also help either that the figure, this particular figure, and it may have only really been mine, but it also has really loose joints. And it almost feels like it's slightly a cheaper plastic. And I gotta feel like it's the same plastic that they use for Berserker. Again, my biggest problem I feel is Berserker Predator set that bar pretty high. City Hunter isn't at the bottom, but it's slightly a few notches below where I felt this line was good with Berserker Predator. Am I right? Am I wrong? Am I in the middle? Let me know down below in the comments section whether you picked up the Lennar Predator City Hunter for yourself or based on this review and this review alone. I will still say, to the credit of Lanard Toys, producing an affordable route for people to be picking up Predator figures that still deliver 7-inch tall figures, 25 points of articulation, and somewhat an array of accessories. He comes with at least 2. I think job well done on Lanard Toys, but I still say you can't compare this necessarily with the stuff that we're getting from NECA Toys. This one definitely will hold up, I think, a little bit better if you're going to be rough playing around with these. So these are definitely geared better, I feel, towards kids. But let me know what your feelings are about this line down below in the comments section. Also, if you're new to this channel and liking all the content you're seeing, consider the idea hitting that subscribe button down below. You may be watching this content regularly and think that you're subscribed to this channel. Maybe you're not. Maybe I'm just opened your eyes. Hey, wait a minute. I never subscribed to this guy. Do that right now. Hit that bell notification as a reminder to YouTube and to yourself when new content is popping up on this channel. And just know as well that Monday to Friday, 12 p.m. and 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is when new videos will be popping up. And don't think that this is the end of our trip down Lanard Toy Predators, because of course, we're not just stopping the review with Berserker Predator and City Hunter. There's going to be a whole ton of Lanard Toy reviews coming your way as well. So keep your peepers peeled to this channel. Lots of stuff coming your way. And as always, guys, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.